Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan Rome.
And I am Erin Viner.
In our top story, it's back to the ballot box for Israelis. The Knesset has announced that it will hold national elections in April. The current government, led by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party, has been in power since 2009 and, according to early polls, will in all likelihood retain its position as the strongest political party in the Knesset after the voting.
Israel will intensify efforts to prevent Iranian entrenchment in Syria, even as the United States pulls its troops out of the Arab Republic. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed that he was in close contact with U.S. President Donald Trump and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo ahead of their decision, and that both men assured him that Washington has other ways of expressing its influence in the area. The Prime Minister said that Israeli officials will study the timetable of the planned withdrawal and weigh what implications it will have on the security of the Jewish state. He underscored the message that Jerusalem will continue to forcefully counter every attempt by Tehran to deepen its presence in Syria, and that Israel's campaign to do so will not be reduced but intensified with the full backing of the United States.
The Iranian ambassador and a member of his diplomatic staff were expelled from Albania after authorities reportedly uncovered an assassination plot aimed at the Prime Minister of Israel. Albanian media reported that Benjamin Netanyahu was forced to abruptly abort his scheduled state visit to Tirana last month for security reasons, and that the cancellation was related to the recent expulsion of Iranian diplomats from the Balkan country. The Israeli premier praised his Albanian counterpart, Edi Rama, for his decision to dismiss Tehran's emissary and said that by doing so, Prime Minister Rama sent a clear message to the radical Islamist regime in Iran that plotting terror attacks has a cost.
Terror continues to pay off in the Palestinian Authority, where leaders are still shelling out cash for attacks against Israelis. Despite having lost millions of dollars in aid from Washington, Ramallah has refused to stop inciting violence through its pay-to-slay incentive program. The Palestinian Media Watch organization is now criticizing the PA's appeal to the United Nations for a $355 million cash infusion to supposedly fund humanitarian projects, while its own budget clearly earmarks ongoing payments of blood money to terrorists. The NGO stated that rather than asking donor countries to provide the money, the UN should join the unequivocal call from many world governments for the PA to immediately halt the squandering of its own funds to incite and reward terrorism and use it instead to assist its own impoverished people.
Two GOP lawmakers are pushing for Washington to recognize Israeli sovereignty in the Golan Heights. Texas Senator Ted Cruz and Arkansas's Tom Cotton drafted a measure stating that Israel's northern border is threatened by Iranian forces and their proxy armies in Lebanon and Syria. They explained that the danger posed comes from Hezbollah's 150,000 rockets, weaponized drones, newly discovered terror tunnels, and more. Cruz and Cotton noted that Bashar al-Assad's regime, with the help of Iranian ayatollahs, is on the verge of securing victory in Syria's civil war, and that Assad may soon turn his attention back to threatening the Jewish state. The proposed resolution stresses that permanent Israeli control of the Golan Heights is crucial to the national security of the Jewish state, and it calls upon the U.S. to recognize Israel's sovereignty over the strategic area.
There's been outrage in Germany after it was revealed that the country is helping to finance terror education in the Palestinian Authority. Members of Parliament were furious following publication of an article in the Bild newspaper exposing the contribution of German funds to the PA Education Department, which assigns textbooks to children containing reverence for murderers and the glorification of terror. Berlin has given more than 32 million euros to Ramallah over the past 4 years. Several leaders are incensed that the donations are being used to encourage, praise, and incite terror in the Palestinian curriculum. MP Frank Müller-Rosentritt is now demanding that Chancellor Angela Merkel account for the disbursement of the nation's hard-earned taxes to support terrorist propaganda.
The online fundraising site DonorBox has suspended the account used to raise money for the boycott, divest, and sanctions movement. This comes after Israeli legal powerhouse Shurat Hadin filed a formal complaint, noting that the account used by the BDS movement also funds Palestinian groups, including factions such as the PLO, Hamas, and Islamic Jihad, all of which have been declared terrorist organizations by the United States. Nitzana Darshan-Leitner, president of Shurat Hadin, explained that she has no intention of allowing terrorist organizations and their accomplices to raise money online uninterrupted.
The U.S. federal government has given hundreds of thousands of dollars to an anti-Israel and anti-American Islamic organization. The Nation of Islam, headed by the notorious anti-Semite Louis Farrakhan, has been working to convert convicts to Islam in the country's prisons. A new report by the Washington Examiner noted that the Black Nationalist group teaches inmates that white people are blue-eyed devils and Jews are the synagogue of Satan. The U.S. Bureau of Prisons has reportedly awarded the Nation of Islam with more than $364,000 in contracts and grants. Peter King, who chairs the House Homeland Security Subcommittee on Counterterrorism and Intelligence, expressed shock over the allocations, stating categorically that no group, entity, or individual associated in any way with Farrakhan or the Nation of Islam should be the recipient of federal funding. He stressed that Farrakhan preaches hatred, anti-Semitism, and racism, and that the use of America's tax dollars to help the group proselytize or spread its teachings is just wrong.
Honduras is considering relocating its embassy to Jerusalem. Israel recently hosted a delegation of Honduran officials who expressed their interest in deepening diplomatic and economic ties with the Jewish state and their excitement at the possibility of moving their diplomatic compound to the Holy City. The talks are said to be at an advanced stage, and the Latin American country has already selected a property which will house the future Honduran embassy in Jerusalem.
The city of Johannesburg, South Africa, has voted to name a prominent street after an infamous Palestinian terrorist. The city's municipality will name the street on which the United States consulate is located after Leila Khaled. She was one of the PLO terrorists who hijacked an American airliner en route from Rome to Tel Aviv in 1969, and the following year she helped hijack an El Al flight from Amsterdam to New York.
The United Nations has refused to condemn the Hezbollah terror group for building cross-border attack tunnels that breach Israeli territory. Israel made an appeal at a special session of the Security Council asking that the world body designate the Iranian proxy army as a terrorist organization. Jerusalem has also accused the Lebanese army of assisting Hezbollah in thwarting Israel's tunnel-busting efforts. Hillel Neuer, executive director of UN Watch, pointed out the hypocrisy and anti-Israel bias in the United Nations. He said so far this year, Israel has been condemned in the General Assembly 21 times, while some of the world's worst human rights violators have received virtually no reprimands. Neuer noted that Iran, Syria, and North Korea received only one condemnation each, while Iran's proxy army in Lebanon, Hezbollah, went unscathed.
Palestinian terror groups in Gaza did their utmost to disrupt Christmas celebrations this year. Christians are brutally persecuted in the Strip and the Palestinian Authority, but this year Arab terrorists were especially cruel by threatening the tiny Christian population residing in the enclave. One Islamic group released a fatwa against observance of the Christian holiday and distributed a flyer warning against the holding of any kind of festivities.
Israel's Domestic Security and Counterintelligence Service, known as the Shin Bet, thwarted more than 500 terrorist attacks this year. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said hundreds of Israeli citizens owe their lives to the dedicated agents of the Shin Bet. Netanyahu praised the intelligence officers for fighting with discretion, ingenuity, creativity, and immense dedication, and he thanked them from the bottom of his heart for protecting the Jewish state.
The largest multinational corporation based in the Jewish state is about to become even bigger. As part of its global manufacturing expansion, Intel has announced plans to add even more operation sites in Israel. About 11,000 people are currently employed by the technology giant throughout the country, and over the past 10 years, the company has already paid Israeli retailers and service suppliers upwards of $10 billion.
Israeli scientists have installed a time capsule on the Beresheet spacecraft, which is scheduled to launch early next year. The time capsule has been filled with discs which include the Hebrew Bible, Jewish prayers, Israel's Declaration of Independence, and Hatikvah, Israel's national anthem. It also holds pictures of the Jewish state, artwork, and even the story of a Holocaust survivor. This treasure trove of hundreds of digital files was uploaded to 3 discs, which were placed in Israel's spacecraft in preparation for its shipment to Cape Canaveral and its launch into space. Beresheet, or Genesis in English, is scheduled to launch in early 2019.
Germany has announced that it will make a one-time payment of $2,800 to the survivors of the Jewish refugee children who were evacuated from the country during the Second World War. These deportations, known as Kindertransport in German, separated the Jewish children from their families, and in most cases they were never reunited because the parents were killed in Nazi concentration camps. Today, only about 1,000 out of the 10,000 children who were evacuated on the Kindertransport are still alive. Greg Schneider, who is a negotiator for the Claims Conference, which works to distribute money to Holocaust survivors, said that this money will serve as a symbolic acknowledgement of the horrible, traumatic events endured by the victims.
The Palestinian Authority has reminded the world that they are not seeking a capital in half of Jerusalem. Instead, they want the entire city for themselves. The Palestinians have long claimed that they wish to establish a capital in East Jerusalem, but a recent statement by PA Chief Negotiator Saeb Erekat makes it clear they won't settle for anything less than all of the Holy City. In his tirade against Australia's recent recognition of West Jerusalem as the Israeli capital, Erekat said that he takes issue with anyone who thinks that only East Jerusalem is on the negotiating table. As 2018 comes to a close and we begin a new year, we here at Israel Now News would like to thank all of our viewers. It has been our privilege to provide you with honest and accurate news about Israel from Jerusalem. This will be our last broadcast, and we want to thank you and the Daystar Network for 7 wonderful years of Israel Now News. Happy New Year.
That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host Josh Reinstein, and we're here on a beautiful sunny day on our rooftop studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Bob Rosenschein. He is a serial entrepreneur here in Israel. Bob, thanks for being on the show.
God bless you, Josh, and God bless your viewers.
You know, you are famous for being the founder and CEO of Answers.com. You've developed a Hebrew version of Windows and so many others. I can't even mention them. What is the secret to your success? How do you always find the next cutting edge in technology?
I think the secret to success is to roll with the punches, to get up when you fall down and keep trying, keep working, and persist.
So you're here in Israel. We're known as a startup nation. Are you able to see some of the new technologies firsthand here, being here on the ground?
One of the exciting things in being in Jerusalem, in Israel, is you see the most exciting entrepreneurs developing technology, see what's going on, the whole ecosystem.
And what do you think coming through the pipeline is the most exciting development? What is the newest industry? Where's the cutting edge coming from now?
Right now, one of the primary areas of investment is cybersecurity. We're also seeing a lot of driverless cars, medical, solar. You have all kinds of treatments for different kinds of diseases, cancers included. It's a very exciting time, and lots of great technology and great products are coming out of this country.
You know, you made Aliyah 35 years ago. Was that helpful in developing new technologies, or did it hurt it because you weren't in the United States where you're from originally?
I traveled back and forth a lot. My background is MIT, and I've been here for a good number of years. I think it's important to realize that in the internet age, the access is really global. You can be on top of things from far away. Of course, it helps to travel, meet the people, speak the language. So I had the benefit of being in touch with lots of good people all over the world. But I've had the pleasure of watching the Israeli ecosystem, the Israeli technology, startup atmosphere grow and just thrive and grow some more.
You served in the Israeli military as well. How did that affect your chances of success in this industry?
A lot has been said about the Israeli armed forces. I was drafted at the tender age of 35, spent 8 weeks in basic training. It gave me insight into how the society here works, and it's a very exciting culture, a little bit different than the one I grew up in. But I did spend some time in the Israeli armed forces, and I think it helped me both understand the country I live in, some of the global challenges, and a different way of looking at the world.
You're very famous here for translating Windows, Microsoft's Windows into Hebrew. What kind of effect did that have on society being able to do it in their own native language?
I had the good fortune a long time ago of meeting a much younger Bill Gates when he was developing Windows at Microsoft, and I had the good fortune to be the first Windows user in this country. It is a long time ago, and the first Windows developer. So I started the company with my brother, Jeff, in which we developed the first Hebrew-English Windows word processor. Later we were tapped by Microsoft in Seattle, in Redmond, to help them design and develop Hebrew and actually Arabic Windows at the time. So I have a lot of pride when I go around the country and I see every school, every office, every bank, every army base using Hebrew Windows. I have a little bit of pride of authorship of having been involved in it, and it certainly gave me a good insight into how Microsoft works and how global tech works. I myself work on more technologies, but Windows has a special place in my heart, let's call it.
Yeah, here in Israel, they have R&D centers for all the major tech companies, Intel, Microsoft, Apple. Why are all the big companies setting up operations here for their research and development?
Almost every global giant, and not just Americans, has an R&D center here. It could be Microsoft or Google, Facebook, Apple, just all of them. That's a very, very short list, but there are many, many more. Intel recently bought Mobileye to get stronger in the whole automotive space. A lot of people think it's the army or the unfortunate need to defend ourselves, but I would have to say something else. I think some of the advantage here, the Israeli culture, and I say this carefully, the Israeli culture is not very good for large-scale manufacturing, let's say. We don't have the capital, the labor, all these different things. But we are strong at innovation, and I would credit it somewhat to the Jewish cultural attribute, both for good and for bad, of argumentation. And I don't mean argumentation in the sense of, I hate you and I want to destroy you, but rather in the Hebrew tradition, argumentation for the sake of the Torah is a very, very positive thing. So the debate, the constantly questioning everything, including authority, turns out to be positive in the high-tech world. Questioning the rules is very, very good for technological innovation. By the way, Josh, it's not as good for traffic safety and things like that, where people have to follow a common goal, but it's very, very good for technological innovation, and it's something we're trying to spread around the world.
They say that a lot of the modern technologies in the 21st century is developed in Israel, whether it be the laptop or the Pentium chip, text messaging, the answering machine, the CAT scan, drip irrigation system. These things are changing the world. What are the reasons that so much of this technology we take for granted every day is coming from this little country no bigger than the size of New Jersey?
I think that Israel has a special role to play, and it's one which I think most Israelis and certainly technologists take to heart. It's a form of tikkun olam, it's a form of improving the world. If we can help cure cancer, if we can help purify water or do solar energy, this is good for the world and for your Bible viewing audience. I would even put it back to Genesis 12:3, which is, and those who bless you will be blessed, and the nations of the world will be blessed through you.
Bob, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
First, I would like to say, visit our country. Be open and be in touch with it. Hear more about it, and we would love to see you here. Welcome.
Thank you for being on the show, and thank you so much for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, wishing you a Happy New Year. Now back to the studio.
Up next, the return to Zion with Karen Hayesod.
On July 23, 2018, planes carrying 70 Jewish families landed at Ben Gurion Airport in Israel. These 300 immigrants from France, Argentina, Ukraine, and Brazil have escaped persecution and are now making a new life in Israel. Greg Mazel, the Director General of Keren Hayesod, made this announcement to the crowd gathered at the airport.
I would like to take this special opportunity to thank Pastor Larry Hatch and the New Beginnings Church on behalf of Keren Hayesod. Your support enables us to fulfill the dream of our brothers and sisters who are here with us today to return to their ancestral homeland. There is no doubt that the New Beginnings Church, led by Pastor Larry Hatch, is playing a key role in supporting Aliyah and fulfilling the biblical prophecy.
Hey everybody, this is Pastor Larry and Tiz, and we want to say hi from Dallas, Texas, and just say what an honor it is to be on the program with Josh and to be standing with the nation of Israel and with Keren Hayesod and partnering with Jewish people around the world in fulfilling Tiz Bible prophecy where Gentiles would partner with the nation of Israel and bring Jews, as Isaiah says, bring Jewish people in our arms and our shoulders. And you need to understand what a miracle this is. For so many years, Gentiles had been working against the nation of Israel. And yet God says, right before the coming of the Messiah, that whole thing will turn around. And instead of Gentiles pushing Jews out of the nation of Israel, when God gave Israel back to the Jewish people, this would be the launching time of the coming of the Messiah. But then God would do even a greater miracle, and he would begin to speak to the hearts of Gentiles and Christians around the world and say, you know what? The nation of Israel and the Jewish people, they're our brothers and sisters. They're our family. And to partner with them in fulfilling Bible prophecy. What an amazing time we live in. So I want to encourage you, wherever you are around the world, stand with the nation of Israel. Stand according to the word of God, that land, the land of Israel, belongs to the Jewish people. But do one more thing. Partner with the nation of Israel. Partner with Keren Hayesod. And help bring Jews from Russia, from Ukraine, from Ethiopia, from around the world. Put them in your arms. Put them on your shoulders, because God's already put them in your hearts. So we thank you. And we love the fact that you're standing with the nation of Israel and that you are a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. I'm Pastor Larry.
I'm Tiz.
We love you guys. See you soon.
Pastors Larry and Tiz Huck are striving to break down the walls that have existed between Christians and Jews. Their New Beginnings Church in Dallas, Texas, and their internationally broadcast television program have raised $1 million in 2018 alone to support Keren Hayesod in bringing individuals and families to Israel to start a new life in peace and security. In addition, their ministry is also supporting Holocaust survivors living in Israel, a children's home for neglected and abused young people, medical equipment, and new construction support for B'nai Zion Hospital in Haifa, and by providing 4 new mobile ICUs for Magan David Adom. Pastors Larry and Tiz want to encourage you, whether Christian or Jew, to come together to support the nation of Israel in any way you can, but especially by rallying behind Keren Hayesod in its efforts to return the Jewish people from around the world to their homeland, Israel.
Lift up your eyes and look around. All your children gather and come to you. The biblical prophecy is unfolding right before our very eyes. The people of Israel are returning to the Promised Land after 2,000 years of exile. But millions of Jews are still longing to come home. Anti-Semitism threatens many of the Jews. We must rescue them before the window of opportunity slams shut. Bless Israel by supporting Keren Hayesod United Israel Appeal, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. Together, we can fulfill the prophecy of the Bible.
Let us bless Israel together.
To donate and get information, call us at 1-800-505-1665 or visit our website at www.khisrael.org.
Anti-Semitism is the world's oldest hatred, its darkest and most enduring hatred. Anti-Semitic capitalists believe that Jews are communists. Anti-Semitic communists believe that Jews are capitalists. Anti-Semitic internationalists believe that Jews are nationalists. Anti-Semitic nationalists believe that Jews are cosmopolitan. Jews, in the eyes of anti-Semites, are the ultimate other. They believe that Jews have all the power in the world, but at the same time they despise Jews and have contempt for Jews for being powerless. And recently, anti-Semites have looked to Israel as the Jew among nations, so that anti-Semitism has become indistinguishable from anti-Zionists. Any person who is against the state of Israel believes that Jews are not a people, that Jews do not have the right to self-determination, that Jews do not have the right to defend themselves, that Jews should be judged by different standards from other nations. That is, by definition, anti-Semitism. We've seen the rise in anti-Semitism throughout the world, particularly in Europe, now in the United States as well. Those of us who cherish and love the Jewish people have to stand together against this age-old scourge of anti-Semitism. Together, we must enlighten the world about the evils of anti-Semitism and the different shapes that anti-Semitism takes. Anti-Semitism is a great threat, not just to Israel, but to civilization itself. The Holocaust stands as a reminder, the greatest mass massacre in human history, of the immense evil that anti-Semitism can bring. It must never, ever happen again.
Lift up your eyes and look around. All your children gather and come to you. The biblical prophecy is unfolding right before our very eyes. The people of Israel are returning to the Promised Land after 2,000 years of exile. But millions of Jews are still longing to come home. Anti-Semitism threatens many of the Jews. We must rescue them before the window of opportunity slams shut. Bless Israel by supporting Keren Hayesod United Israel Appeal, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. Together, we can fulfill the prophecy of the Bible.
Let us bless Israel together.
To donate and get information, call us at 1-800-505-1665 or visit our website at www.khisrael.org.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El-Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Yochanan and all of our staff join me in wishing all of our viewers a very happy New Year.